All right, folks, welcome back to the Steve MALZBERG Show. Hour number 2, Friday edition. Coming up in just a moment, we'll be joined by the niece of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Alveda King. Also, Congressman Pete Hoekstra will join us in this half hour. And then MALZBERG's Media Madness with Noel Shepard. So, big hour. But right now, we are joined by Dr. Alveda King, niece of, as I mentioned, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., pastor with Priests for Life, founder of King for America. Hello, Doctor.
Hello. I'm so glad to join you. Hello. How are you, Steve, and your whole audience?
Well, thank you. It's always great to talk to you. You know that. It's an honor. I value our friendship and our relationship here. But I right away knew when we heard the news yesterday that I'd be trying to set up this interview with you on the passing, of course, of Nelson Mandela. Talk about your remembrances, what stands out in your mind, what kind of person he was, maybe things we don't know.
Well, you know, my family, especially my aunt Coretta Scott King, after President Mandela was released from jail, and then, of course, after he was freed, he then became president. Ambassador Andrew Young and I were talking today about all of those experiences. I actually had a chance to travel to South Africa post-apartheid. Some of those issues still remain today, though. There's still inequity there. And so when you think about a man who in his younger life was a radical, a rebel, and he, of course, did some things that maybe peace-loving people would say, oh, my God, you can't celebrate that. But at my house, at my home, I have a portrait. And in the portrait, there's a picture of my uncle, ML, Martin Luther King Jr., President Mandela, and Malcolm X. And so the three of them are there. My uncle looks very solemn. President Mandela is smiling with a victory symbol and, you know, making his hand into victory.
Right.
And then Malcolm looks very stoic. Three different men. My uncle was peace-loving, and he was peaceful all the way through. President Mandela, in his latter years, became that peaceful statesman teaching love and forgiveness. So I had an opportunity to meet him. I was grateful. I had an opportunity to travel to South Africa. And so, for instance, when I was a young woman, I was pro-choice. I thought it was okay to have abortions and things. And then later, my heart was touched and my heart was changed even after I had my own abortions. And today, I fight and I champion for the little unborn baby. So if I have any regret, I only met him one time. But I wish we had had an opportunity for that conversation and for me to invite him to be a voice for those little helpless babies as well.
And it's interesting, you know, the fact that, as you mentioned, after choosing peaceful protests to protest the apartheid in South Africa, and then the tragic slaughter of many of those peaceful protesters, he did, or his group, the ANC, did turn to violence. In fact, he remained on the terror watch list here in the United States, it's been reported today, until 2008. But that aside, he then, once he went to prison, he came out. And instead of choosing revenge or vengeance or dictatorship or, you know, serving in an office that he could have kept and gone the way of Fidel Castro did with Cuba, he elected to forgive. He elected to better the lot of his people, and he elected to give up power so that the country could progress. You know, after he was out of power, it just reminds me a lot of. I think that that's what your uncle, your late uncle, would have done under similar circumstances, again, from the point of being released from prison on.
Well, you know, sometimes people have the thought desperate times call for desperate measures, and that's why we see some of the things that to live together as brothers, and now I will add, and sisters, or perish as fools. So I believe that President Mandela, towards the end of his life, of course, began to embrace that type of thinking. And I think that that is well served. And I believe that he was one, as you said, who was able to forgive. And when someone forgives, then that opens the door for them to be forgiven. And I think those are some principles that we're going to have to revisit and think about. And so I encourage everyone to remember him kindly. Remember that gentle smile. Remember everything that he went through to become a humble man, going through the fire. And he certainly went through the fire. And so that's what I think about. I see the wrinkles, across his forehead, but I see the gentleness of the smile. And even in that fist that he could still raise, power, speaking peace to power and power to peace or whatever, I could see some of that strength, that lion-like strength. So I believe that for those of us who have been forgiven much, we can certainly be gracious and remember a man. To me, I call him a statesman.
We're talking to Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. She is the pastor with Priests for Life and also founder of King for America here on the Steve MALZBERG Show. You know, you would think that that there are other leaders around the world, specifically in Africa, that could have learned a lot from the way Nelson Mandela ran his country and tried to better his people. Because you know, that's not typical of the continent of Africa, unfortunately.
Absolutely not. And as I say, I've been to South Africa. I've been on the West Coast over to Ghana, Johannesburg, Swaziland, and sometimes you still hear that warrior kind of philosophy. But we're believing. I believe my cousin, Elder Bernice King, who is the CEO of the King Center. There was a lot of rioting and violence over in Egypt not too long ago, and she said, I wish I could carry my father's message over to those young people. So as long as we can continue to advance the message of brotherhood, sisterhood, a beloved community, I'd like to say from the perspective of a preacher myself, a gospel Baptist preacher, and a family of preachers who serve Jesus Christ, that we can love, we can forgive, and we can exemplify that life before others. So I believe that has happened in President Mandela's life.
One more for you. What do you think Barack Obama, if anything, could learn from Nelson Mandela?
I believe that President Obama, if he would stop and take pause and look at a life of someone who had a lot of blood and war in his early years, who then learned to love and embrace and forgive, then that is a lesson for every statesman to embrace.
Okay, fair enough. Doctor, thank you very much. Always great to talk to you. Have a wonderful Christmas and New Year's, and I look forward to the next time we speak.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Take care. Dr. Alveda King, ladies and gentlemen. Very interesting. Her thoughts on Nelson Mandela. And the funeral, I believe, is going to be a week from this Sunday. And I know that, of course, Barack Obama will lead the American delegation. And you heard earlier when we spoke to Congressman Ed Royce, who's the chair of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, he said he would love to go and would be honored to attend the funeral of Nelson Mandela. But, of course, I didn't delve into that with him. But, of course, the way that happens is he either applies for or waits to be, hopes to be asked by the president or the State Department. And, you know, I don't know how big a delegation they're taking. But certainly you would think that the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee might be somebody who they would consider putting on the list. We will have to wait and see about that. All right, folks, a lot ahead on the Steve MALZBERG Show coming up at the bottom of the hour. Noel Shepard, it's Friday. It'll be the midway point of the show. It's MALZBERG's Media Madness. You know it, you love it. Lots of interesting stuff to discuss this week, as is always the case, the firing or resignation of Martin Bashir and other events. We'll also talk just moments from now with Congressman Pete Hoekstra. And then we're going to talk about, well, the war on Christmas. The left says there is no war on Christmas, but there is. And we'll talk about it. All that straight ahead right here on the very aptly named Steve MALZBERG Show on Newsmax TV and radio.